Hi, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And this is Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Zomi. Breast pumps approved by lactation consultants and loved by moms. And today's episode is also brought to you by Cake Maternity. Cake Maternity stocks one of the largest ranges of maternity and nursing bras. And we will hear more from our sponsors later. But at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, you will find a sponsor page. And we would love it if you would check there if you need anything, because our sponsors make this podcast possible. And while you're there, you can scroll down and you can enter your email address and you'll get episodes sent straight to your inbox every week. And now Dianne has our review of the week.
And it comes from our iTunes. Thank you so much for putting this on iTunes. It really helps the podcast a lot. From Chelsea. She says, how do you do it? I swear you're psychic. Every time I'm going through something, I can almost bet that I'll get my answers on Monday. Your timing is impeccable. I struggle with anxiety. You did an episode on that. I hit 1 year breastfeeding. Literally the following Monday, you have an episode on that. I'm not even surprised anymore. We must be on the same wavelength. Okay, now that that's out of the way, here's my review. Abby and Dianne, you are so knowledgeable, passionate, and real. I started listening to you when my baby was 4 months old. Like I said, we recently hit a year and there's no end in sight. Because of your support, I've made it this far and we've reached my goal of becoming a lactation professional. I reached out to you throughout all my stages of realization and making a difference, and your constant support kept me believing in myself as a nursing mother. I don't want to make this a novel, but I just want to say that you have helped me stand up for nursing people everywhere. We are in this fight together to normalize breastfeeding wherever we are. In a time where so much is changing, I know we can change how society looks at breastfeeders. Fellow breastfeeders, here's your reminder to nurse your baby toddler in public without any shame. You are amazing. You are enough. Abby and Dianne, thank you. Thank you so much. From Chelsea.
Oh, that was very sweet. I love her inclusive language too, nursing people everywhere.
I know. I think that was awesome.
That's a good reminder for us too.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I love that, she kind of like really, really felt empowered with her breastfeeding. And I'm hoping that everybody is feeling that way, because no matter where you are in your journey, you've come a long way. Like this is not easy stuff. And this was one of the reasons why we're doing this episode today, because sometimes we really need to feel that empowerment to be like, no, this is something that I want to do and I'm going to keep going with my breastfeeding journey.
Yeah, just from my personal struggle, I struggled in the beginning, not with people telling me to wean, but with just like figuring out breastfeeding. You go through all of this, like, first of all, you're going through a whole entire transformation as a person from not being a parent to being a parent. And whether you're breastfeeding or not, that is just one head trip. That's like a whole entire, you're becoming a new person. I mean, your baby is born, but you're kind of born too. You're a whole new person. And it takes this like time to go through this transformation or this transition. And it's just, there's no way, it's too abstract and it's too big to like even put into words. And you can only know if you've been through it. I know you all know. And I don't have any words to explain it. But then you put on top of that, like your breastfeeding struggles, which people listening to this podcast would relate to. And, through all of that, I mean, for me anyway, through all of that and kind of coming out the other side of it, I was just like, I am not stopping. Because I was like, okay, I'll go a year. And then I got to a year and I was like, there's no way that I'm going to stop this now. Like, we finally figured this out. And I know some people don't, some people want to wean whenever, but I didn't want to. And I just was like, I'm not stopping this now because I worked so hard to get here.
Mm-hmm.
And this has become like who I am. Yeah. And then you have people who are like, well, that's kind of weird. You have people around you going like, oh, they're getting kind of old, aren't they? Or like, are they really getting enough from you? Or your doctor's saying like, yeah, all kinds of things like, well, if you want to have another baby, you'll have to wean. If if you're going to go through such and such procedure, whatever, you're going to have to wean. If you're going to,
there's so much.
There's so many reasons that people tell you to wean.
if you're, if they feel like your child isn't eating enough solid foods, they'll tell you, well, you have to wean so that they'll eat more solid foods. They're not, it's not for nutrition anymore. So why are you doing it? Kind of really disregarding the whole relationship as a whole.
Right. Oh, it's just for you now.
Yeah.
The child doesn't get anything from it. It's just selfish now. You're just doing it for you.
Hear a lot and I know we put here, when the doctor tells you to wean, and it doesn't even have to be, it could really be, it could be anybody. Sometimes you'll hear this from family members or friends or whatever, but sometimes it'll even be a specialist. Maybe it's not even your actual doctor. I've had a lot of people contact me and be like, well, I need a dental work done. And they said, well, you can't get anything done until you're done breastfeeding. Maybe you should wean or you can get this, or, maybe it's, a GI doctor. Maybe you've been sent to a GI doctor. I think we all know how I feel about that. But sent you to a GI doctor for your baby. Maybe your baby's having some gastro issues, whatever. And they're saying, well, you're going to have to wean and put your baby on this specialized formula because we think this will be better for your baby. Like those kinds of things too happen. And then you're like, okay, it's not even just like, okay, now you have to, somebody's telling you to wean and it's not what you want to do. It's like, now you feel like, am I going to be hurting my child by continuing to breastfeed? Like that's the other thing that happens with that stuff too. Somebody tells you need to wean because you can't do this medical procedure. Now it's either you or your baby, right? Or you need to wean because you can't let your baby have this, medication that you're going to take. Or you need to wean.
I was going to say, or because you smoke, or because you're taking medication, or because of, all kinds of things that we just think, well, you can't do that. You have to wean in order to do that. And then you're like, okay, well, what do I do? Do I take care of my mental health or do I breastfeed my baby?
Right.
And I mean, the right thing to do is take care of your mental health. Like if you make that decision, then that's what you should do. But you don't have to wean to do it. That's the thing is people don't know.
It's really maddening, because you're left making a decision that is an impossible decision to make. And you're left feeling like you're hurting your child. Just, there's no way around that. And nobody should put you into a position like that. Really. It's awful.
I'm thinking this podcast is about breastfeeding, but it's also about us too. So I'm going to tell this personal story. So I was on, which Dianne already knows, but I was on, we talked about that anxiety episode and how much I struggled with anxiety, and I was on antidepressants, Paxil, when I was 30. I'm 45 now. So that was a while ago. That was certainly before I had kids and all that. And then I went off it and I was doing really well and everything was great. Not great, but I mean, I was managing without medication. And then just recently, just with the pandemic and all that, I have struggled a lot. Been having a lot of anxiety, a lot of just a lot of anxiety. And so I decided to start taking medication again. And so I'm 3 weeks into taking Zoloft. And so far it's going good. I think that I don't have any major side effects or anything. But the reason why I'm telling the story is, first of all, because I want to tell people that I'm taking medication so that when I say oh, if you need medication, you should totally take medication, that I'm not just I walk the walk too. Mm-hmm. I believe that this is something that I need right now and I'm going to do it. And I will say, you've heard us talk about all these medications or whatever. If I was still breastfeeding right now, even with everything that I know, I would still be a little nervous. I would still be okay, let me just make sure that it's safe for me to take this Zoloft while I'm breastfeeding. And even with everything that I know, it's still in my head, that doubt, that because it's so common, it's such a thing in our society. You can't do this when you're breastfeeding. You can't do that. You can't do that. It's in there, I would still feel oh, wait, I can do this, right? Right. Wait, this is safe, right? I would still be doubting. So, I mean, even when you have all the information, the whole point of this is when you have the information and you think you have the information, or you think it sounds, maybe your doctor tells you something or somebody tells you something that you're oh, I don't know if that's right or true. We still have all these messages and all this stuff from society that's going to just make us doubt whether we can continue to breastfeed.
Yeah. And I really have a hard time with anybody telling a parent what they should be doing. Like they don't know you and your relationship with your child. So for them to say to you, well, you really should wean, or when are you going to wean? When are you planning to wean? Because you're going to have to wait and, do A, B, and C once you wean. Like, how about having a discussion with that parent and saying, well, how do you feel about what if it came down to weaning? Like, is that something you would want to do? Should we try to find a way to make sure that you're comfortable until you're ready to wean? Or how about let's look into this more and see if you even need to wean for this to happen, instead of putting these blanket statements out there about, I know more than you, so you have to do as I say, or you have to struggle.
Yeah. I remember when I was pregnant with Jack, I got my tooth started to hurt. And I went to the dentist and I was like, I'm pregnant, all this, whatever. And he's like, I think you need a root canal. And he was like, here's what we'll do. Since you're pregnant, we'll do half of it. We'll do like the first part. And then we can wait until you have your baby to do the rest of it, just so that we're doing like minimal work while you're pregnant. And he was like, willing to do that. He wasn't like, well, we can't do this now, or we can't, da, da, da. And then when I was breastfeeding, I was like, well, I'm breastfeeding now. And he was like, this is totally safe to do while you're breastfeeding. It's totally fine. And he like knew that information.
Yeah.
So if you have a doctor who's telling you, I mean, especially for doctors, I would say, I can think of some situations where you might want to wean. Like there's a woman on Instagram who had a double mastectomy. She had to wean. She was diagnosed with cancer and she had to wean. Like, that's a situation where you have to.
Yeah.
But when you have a doctor that's just like, well, you need to wean, that is a major red flag.
Mm-hmm. Because
there are not many situations where you actually have to. Like where you actually have to,
right?
It's a situation. If somebody tells you that, I feel like that's just like a big red flag, big flashing neon light to look into it further, because it's probably not true.
And I've had parents that had to go on a medication, and I do see this a lot. So if you're one of these people, you're not alone, where you were on something prior to pregnancy for an actual, like for a real legitimate, like lifelong situation. And this one mom that I'm thinking of right now has MS, and she would be on a medication. And then when pregnancy hit, came off the medication and then had to go on it within so many months of, being postpartum. Mm-hmm. In order to manage her symptoms. Mm-hmm. And it was actually safe for her to continue breastfeeding, but she herself did not feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And she even said, like, I am not comfortable with it, so I need to figure out how to wean. So it's like, that's her making her own decision based on her beliefs. And, and I could give her all the information in the world on why it's okay. And she was just like, I just don't feel comfortable with it. And that's okay. You're at least making your own decision. You are making your own decision about how you feel about it.
Yeah. We go through that right now with the pandemic, even like it's like, well, maybe this, we could do this thing and maybe it's safe to do that. And I was like, but you know what? I'm going to choose not to do that because I know that I'll be just managing my own anxiety the whole time.
Right. And that's
a choice that I need to make to just not have to deal with anxiety the whole time. Is I'm going to just choose to, change plans or do something else so that I am not freaking the fuck out all the time. Yeah. So like that's, then you make that decision.
But when you have somebody that's saying to you, oh, your baby's 14 months old and still waking up at night to breastfeed, maybe you should wean. Like that kind of stuff, that they're crossing a line. Like that is their opinion. That is not medical advice. That is an opinion that somebody has.
And it's not true anyway.
It's not
going to help. It's not going to help them sleep longer if you wean. That's not a thing.
But then you're like, okay, am I doing the wrong thing? Because then those parents email us, which, and they're like, did I do something wrong? Did I screw up my kid? Yeah. Because they're attached to me and I must have done something wrong. Because now they were not sleeping, and the doctor tells me I need to wean because that's why they don't sleep. It's because it's like, oh my gosh, no, you didn't do anything wrong. This is just, I mean, babies are babies, they're going to do what they're going to do. And it's not okay for anybody to say to you, oh, well, if you weren't breastfeeding still, they'd be this perfect child that sleeps and eats great solids and gains perfect weight and does all the things textbook. No, that's not.
I know. And what you're saying is that breastfeeding, the thing that babies were born to do, is interrupting their development.
Exactly.
Like the way that like all mammals are designed to feed their babies and toddlers, by the way, it's like that's interrupting their like life progress.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
My God. So should we go on with that after? Should we go further into that after we talk about our peeps today?
Absolutely. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Zomi, breast pumps approved by lactation consultants and loved by moms. Zomi's unique alternating mode design works with you to make expressing breast milk as comfortable and easy as possible. Their pumps have hospital-grade strength, are portable, BPA-free, and best of all, covered by all insurances. The new Zomi Z2 features 3 different pumping styles, which you can further tailor for comfort: massage, expression, and 2-phase mode, expression and massage. The Zomi Z2 is a closed system pump that prevents milk from backing up in the tubing. It also comes with a lithium battery and a micro USB port with cable for connecting to a power source, ideal for working and traveling. Zomi understands how crucial breastfeeding and pumping are to motherhood, so they made it easier with their double electric breast pumps. Check out Zomi at zomi.com, that's ZOMEE.com, and you can use code BADASS20 for 20% off of your purchase. And today's episode is also brought to you by Cake Maternity. Cake Maternity is a nursing bra specialist, passionate about breastfeeding and the many benefits it offers for parent and bub and the environment. Breastfeeding, while natural, doesn't always come naturally to everyone. That's why they've made it their mission to empower breastfeeders as they mindfully navigate the world of parenthood and help make breastfeeding easier through experience-driven innovation. Cake Maternity stocks one of the largest ranges of maternity and nursing bras, which include seamless, sleep, flexible wired, non-wired, sports, padded, plunge, t-shirt, and fuller-breasted bras in sizes ranging from 30A to 42K. With 13 years of experience under their belt, Cake Maternity is renowned for their quality, fit, and support. Cake Maternity has you covered for your maternity and nursing bra needs. Head to Cake Maternity, that's like birthday cake, cakematernity.com, and use code BADASS15 for 15% off of your purchase. And our sponsors and their promo codes can be found in our show notes under this episode at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. Our show notes will also include further information about things we talk about in this episode. And at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, you'll find all of our breastfeeding resources, all of our other episodes, and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne, where she won't tell you to wean.
I will not, I promise. So should we talk about how to talk about or how to talk to people that tell you to wean?
Yes, absolutely. And I think you have a few options. And this goes on, I feel like your option has to be what you can emotionally handle. Because you have the option to educate someone, even your doctor. You have the option to go, well, so why are you saying that I should wean? What are you concerned about? What do you think is the problem here? And then you can say, I have information from my lactation consultant. I have information from my own research that isn't true. So what do you say about that? And you can also get a lactation consultant and bring them on, as part of your team, and have them there, to offer their own opinions. But if you want to try to educate, obviously that's wonderful and very helpful to the people that come after you. But I never felt I mean, sometimes, but like when I'm at the dentist's office and they're like, oh, nighttime breastfeeding rots your teeth. I just smile and nod. I'm like, okay. Like, I don't have the emotional energy to go at it with a doctor in the doctor's office, I just don't. I feel exhausted by it. And so I choose not to do that. Although I know that many people do choose to do it. And thank you. Just thank you so much for doing that, because it is really important for them to hear information. The fact that they're not getting information from like the past 50 years about breastfeeding is troubling, but most of them do not have any of this information. Or, if your doctor has like breastfeeding information, it's because they took the initiative to go and get it, because it's not in their curriculum. They're not exposed to it. So some of them choose to educate themselves, and that's great, but most of them don't.
I mean, and that really, we're not just saying that. Like, I work with pediatricians who say to me all the time, we don't get this training. We don't get this.
Yeah.
So it really is.
It's true. It's not a part of medical curriculum.
It is not. And, a lot of times, medical professionals, whether it be your pediatrician or your OB or whatever, they want to give you the best information, but sometimes they just don't have it. But if you're coming to them and you're saying, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, my kid is still up twice a night eating, the first thing they're going to say to you is wean them. Like, because they don't know what else, like what other thing are they going to say to you?
I think this goes back to like what I always say is, we used to live in village type settings where elder people were, there to show us the way, and people who had breastfed were around us teaching us to breastfeed and what was normal and helping, with babies and children around. And we have gotten ourselves into a situation where we are completely, the nuclear family is completely isolated. So you have yourself and you're going through all this stuff yourself. And then we have these doctors that we have basically put into this position where they are the authority and the person who, the only person we have to go to for information. And so they're being asked questions all the time that they don't know the answer to. So they're going to give their opinion because they don't have the answer and they want to give you an answer. I don't think that I've ever heard a doctor say, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Can I refer you to, a lactation consultant or a whatever? I mean, they would. If you have a question if you have a mole on your body that looks suspicious, they're going to refer you to a mole specialist, a dermatologist or whatever. They're going to refer you somewhere. But when it comes to like parenting and lactation, they don't do that.
Right.
They just say, well, they just go along with like cultural norms. This is our cultural norm. And so, this just do that. And that's not okay, because if that's not what you want, then it's not what you want. And it's also not based on child development or biology or anything that's actually true.
And I think a lot of parents are realizing this is a situation, like this is what they have to kind of deal with. And they're figuring out that they need to go elsewhere for their information. Like that's something I see all the time. And it's stuff that I see like in our reviews and everything where people are like, okay, I've found my own information. I've become empowered. I found my own, lactation specialist that I can ask questions to or whatever. And I don't necessarily listen to what my pediatrician or my OB or my whoever has to say about, this situation with breastfeeding. And I've had messages like probably twice in the last week and a half. I had a couple of people come to me that were like, former clients of mine saying, I'm getting pushback about sleep for my baby or feeding for my baby or, attachment parenting for my baby, like all that kind of stuff. And I'm getting pushback, and I would like suggestions on a new pediatrician, or I would like suggestions on how to deal with it, or I would like and it's like people are figuring it out, and sometimes they're just like, you know what? I realize I can't talk to my doctor about these specific things. So I'm going to go elsewhere to get the guidance that I need. And that's okay, because now you're building a village, right? Like you're building your village, and that's okay. I don't think it's ever meant to just have one person that you go to for every single thing. So it's okay to have that village of people that like, you're my go-to on this, you're my go-to on this. But a lot of times that comes after a lot of frustration of dealing with this for a while. And I really wish people would kind of come into parenting thinking, okay, let's build my village now. Let's build it.
I know
first.
you don't know that that's what you need, because you just think, you go in thinking that your doctor has all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the biggest thing for me when I found other people that breastfeed and started hanging around them. I mean, that was the biggest game changer in all of my parenting journey. That changed everything, not just breastfeeding, but all of the decisions that I was making. I connected with people that were feeling that they were like parenting a little bit outside of the norm, with attachment parenting or whatever. And just connecting with them, that changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
It changed my level of anxiety, changed, my decision making. I was more confident. That was where like that real empowerment came from.
Yeah. And
that makes such a huge difference.
It does. And right now when you're in a pandemic,
yeah,
it's really hard to find that village. So your village might be a podcast. Your village might be a Facebook group,
yeah,
or like something like that. And that's
that's
that
how
is okay.
I found them, in a local Facebook group,
mm-hmm.
like a Chicago-based Facebook group is where we all met for the first time. And then we're like, "Hey, do you want to go to the zoo?" And a bunch of us met up at the zoo, and the rest is history.
And it's it's those people. I mean, and I I didn't have a lot of people around me when I first had my kids. And, like I had said before too, like my first son was born in a different state, and then we moved back as soon as he was born. And like I hadn't been living in my home state for years. And then I come back. So I had like lost touch with friends, and, I really didn't have a lot of people around me, but my sisters had kids, in the couple of years prior to that. So a lot of times I'd be like, okay, the baby's spitting up. Is this a big deal? My sister, no, not at all. Sometimes babies are spitters, sometimes not. This is what you do. Don't worry about it, whatever. I'm like, okay, but so I really felt that I wasn't calling my doctor for everything. Like I was really kind of picking more at my family, which is how it should be. But
Right.
Not everybody has that. And I totally appreciate the fact that not everybody has that. So you do have to go to your outside sources and find that. And it is really, and when you're in a pandemic, like that is a really hard thing to do, to find those outside resources for yourself. But it's so important. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to have to just count on that one provider who maybe you don't have a relationship with necessarily.
You want just somebody their patient. I mean, they, even if they're the greatest guy in the world or lady or whoever, they're just your doctor, and you're just a slew of like hundreds of patients that they're just trying to answer questions for. And
so
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, so like, you don't have to feel like if somebody tells you, you should wean so that your child eats better solids or sleeps better, or, whatever the zillion things that we, kind of were talking about today. If that's not something that you want to do, that's not something you have to do.
Yeah. You know what happens sometimes? And I've actually had people message me and they're like, well, I was told that I need to wean. And I'll just go off on this whole thing. Well, that's not true. And you can look here and and this isn't true. And then they'll be like, well, so I don't know. I think maybe I'll, I should. And I'm like, wait a minute. You want to wean. Is that what we're getting at here? Like, it's almost like an excuse to wean.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need an excuse to wean.
No.
Because then I'm like, oh, wait, you want to wean? Okay, here, let me give you different resources then. Because I have resources on how to wean. And you can wean whenever you want. You can wean That's your decision. That's your personal decision.
Right.
But other people, if they're telling you to wean and you don't want to wean, and if they're telling you have to wean, again, that's a huge red flag. And, so we're supposed to be talking about what to do. We can just change the title. But, when I was saying before about like educating people and, taking the time to do that, I also mentioned smiling and nodding. Smiling and nodding goes a long way with whoever you're talking to. You can just say, okay. Oh, okay. Because people can't make you wean. They just can't. And they can tell you all the things, or you can say, I don't want to talk about this anymore. We're good. I don't want to talk about this topic anymore.
Right.
If that's especially if it's like your family or something, say it. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Oh, yeah. Especially if it's your family.
Yeah.
It's not their business. Yeah. And it really, when it comes to like the other thing, it doesn't matter if it is your provider, if it's your family member, whatever. They're going to say to you, oh, I think you should just wean. Or why don't you just wean now? Or yeah, if it's really like, why don't you just wean? They say that and then they go on with their day. They're not thinking about that conversation again.
No.
Whereas for you, as a parent, you're like, anxiety goes through the roof and you're tormented over it. And, oh, well then, if I should wean, then I got to do this, that, and the other thing. And how is my baby going to adapt? And I don't know what to do. Like it is not as easy as that.
That is the other thing. They don't have to wean.
Right.
Because weaning is no joke. Like your child, if you want to wean, go for it and we'll give you the resources for it. But it's no joke. Like it's a process and your child is not going to be happy. And I'm not saying that you should keep breastfeeding just because your child's unhappy about it. Like, I'm just saying this person telling you to just wean as if it's just a thing you do one afternoon.
Be like, just potty train.
Yeah, right. Just potty train them.
Snap your fingers and it'll happen. But it should be your decision. That's really like the bottom line takeaway of this episode is that it should be your decision. All of it should be your decision. Yeah. If it comes, no matter what the reason being, if you decide, okay, I want to wean because I feel like I'll get more sleep, which probably isn't true, but okay, give it a shot. Good luck to you with that one. But it's your choice. And that's what it comes down to. It should be your decision. Nobody should be telling you, you need to wean if you want to do this medical procedure. You need to wean if it really is not a reason for you to need to wean. And the majority of the time it is not. It should be your decision.
My boobs, my business.
Oh, that's good. Did you just make that up?
I don't think so. I think that's like a meme thing that goes around.
I think
sometimes.
I've seen it. Yeah. But you could have made it up. I don't know.
I did. I made it up. That came from me.
Somebody's going to sue us, probably.
You know what I did come up with, though, that is around now is the, how does it go? If you say, I support breastfeeding, but ...
Oh, that was you?
Yes, it means you don't support breastfeeding.
Right, yeah.
That was my very first meme that went crazy.
That's like awesome.
10 years ago.
It's really good. But it's true. And it's like, that's true with everything, right? We hear it all the time. People say, A, B, and C. However, it's like, all right, now you just totally negated everything that came before that.
Yeah, I support breastfeeding, but as long as it's, they're under 6 months.
Yeah. You know what I hear about with that kind of thing is like the biting, right? And it's funny because you kind of like made me think of it when you're first talking at the beginning of the episode about really kind of going so far to make your relationship with your baby work. And then you get to a certain point and you're like, well, I'm not going to stop now. Right. And that's kind of how I felt. Like I had one kid bite me and bite me like hard enough to like draw blood. Like it was pretty significant. Mm-hmm. And it was one of my twins. And then now I'm trying to breastfeed 2 kids off of this, off one side and try to heal the other side and everything. And people tell me all the time, oh, I'm done. I'm weaning if they bite me.
Yeah.
And like when it happened to me, I was like, I came way too far. And I remember he was 7 months old. And I remember thinking, I am 7 months in. I'm not stopping now. We're just going to have to figure this out. Like, and there was my thing. I was like, I'm not stopping because like, no, I didn't go all this way, breastfeed these 2 kids and make it work for my family with my toddler and all this stuff. And then I'm not just going to stop just because of that. But that was my choice.
And people act like it's stupid. They're like, oh, well, just wean. It's no big deal. Like, well, you'll still have your child. People don't understand that this is like a relationship that you have, that this is like the defining thing in your relationship with your child. People act like that's stupid, but it's actually, it's biological. Mm-hmm. This is the first thing that you do when they're born. This is the way that they are, developing attachment to you. And, this is like, it's not just a tiny little thing. Don't let anybody tell you that you're taking it too seriously, or that, that you're making too big of a deal out of it. 'Cause you're not. This is the biggest thing. And people don't get it.
No.
And you got to know that when people are saying these things or whatever they say to you, like, they just don't know. They have no idea. And it's sad. And sometimes people are jealous.
Yeah.
Sometimes people, especially family members or whatever, and they see this happening and they're just like, oh, I didn't have that, or I didn't. And it sucks. It sucks. It must suck to look, to see something happening that you tried to do and couldn't, or that you were told you shouldn't do, or, whatever. And you didn't have that. And, that must be terrible. But I mean, that's where some of it comes from sometimes.
Right. Absolutely. So keep doing your thing.
Yes. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.